Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a look at a creative life that,
Mm.
well, it burned with such an intense commitment that it really did change modern cinema forever. We're diving into the journey and the tragic legacy of Heath Ledger.
It's a profound story, and it's one that I think gets simplified far too often, just boiled down to fame and loss. But when you actually look at the material, his notes, what co-star said, you realize this is less a biography and more a study in the incredibly high price of creative immersion.
So that's our mission today, to go beyond the headlines and explore what happens when an artist is so gifted and so committed that they push right past the point of no return. The central tension is just devastating. He gave the world one of the most terrifying characters in film history.
The Joker.
The Joker. Yet he was already starting to lose himself while the world was still waiting to applaud.
Exactly. We're tracing that fragile, almost invisible line between total dedication and total burnout. The details show a man who is chasing an artistic truth, but the speed and the intensity of that chase, it ultimately broke him.
To understand the cost, you have to understand where that drive came from. So let's start at the beginning.
Heath Andrew Ledger was born in Perth, Australia, 1979. And the sources all paint a really consistent picture of him as a child. He was quiet, intensely observant, a dreamer, but not in a passive way. He was someone who was constantly using his imagination, trying to live in different realities.
And you see that playing out almost immediately in his life choices. At just 17, with basically nothing but a backpack, he leaves Perth for Sydney. This wasn't some calculated career move, was it?
No, not at all. And that's the crucial distinction here. He wasn't chasing fame or magazine covers. He was chasing freedom. He was chasing stories. He just felt this restless need to move, to challenge himself, to find roles that would let him express those deeper, sometimes darker parts of the human experience.
He starts out in small TV roles and then Hollywood notices.
Yeah.
Immediately, he had this magnetic quality on screen, an effortless charm, but with these piercing, soulful eyes that just told you there was so much more going on underneath. He was marked for success right away.
And he got it.
Right.
Rapidly. By 21, he's starring in 10 Things I Hate About You. He becomes the classic teen heartthrob. But what's so fascinating, and what the materials really emphasize, is how deeply uncomfortable that easy success made him feel. He was a leading man who seemed to be actively looking for the exit ramp, away from the glamour and toward the grip.
That resistance defines his choices then, doesn't it? Choices that must have been baffling to a lot of people at the time. He could have just settled into these comfortable, lucrative roles, but he didn't.
He was seeking depth. I mean, look at Brokeback Mountain, an Oscar nomination by age 25. That was not a safe choice for a young leading man back then. And it's all summed up in this one quote that really feels like his mission statement. I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of wasting my life.
If you look at his career through that lens, through that quote,
Ah,
what does it tell you about the risks he was taking? Because to an outsider, it might have looked like he was sabotaging his own superstardom.
it tells you that success, defined by a box office number, meant absolutely nothing to him. Easy work was a waste of time. He actively chose these challenging roles, like in Monsters Ball, right when Hollywood wanted him to be making generic action films. He wasn't chasing blockbusters. He was chasing the truth, even if that truth was fractured or painful.
He was trying to be a student of his craft, but the teachers he chose demanded a huge personal price.
Precisely. And in a way, his fame made his work harder because it was a distraction from that internal commitment he needed. His need for authenticity and his hunt for roles that pushed him emotionally. It all set the stage for the one role that would immortalize him and ultimately exhaust him.
And that, of course, is the Joker.
The Joker. In 2007, when Christopher Nolan cast him in The Dark Knight, wow, the public skepticism was immediate. It was loud. People genuinely laughed. They said he was too pretty, too soft, too young to follow Jack Nicholson.
But Ledger saw a challenge there, didn't he? He saw a chance to create something totally new, something that wasn't from a comic book but was built on something terrifyingly real.
He did. He saw anarchy and chaos, but he wanted to ground it in something human, loneliness, pain, and his preparation for this role. This is where dedication really crosses over into something dangerous.
So describe that process. He locked himself in a hotel room for weeks. What was he actually doing in there?
He was building a monster, meticulously, from the inside out. The isolation wasn't just about learning lines, it was about severing his connection to his own identity. And we know from the sources that he kept the Joker diary during this time. And this wasn't just a prop.
What was in that diary that shows just how deep he was going?
It was a catalog of chaos. The sources say he filled it with just Scribbles, fractured thoughts, photos of hyenas laughing, stills from A Clockwork Orange. It was a physical manifestation of the chaos he was inviting into his own mind. He was trying to find the voice, the strange physicality, by accessing the darkest human shadows he could find.
So he built the character on anarchy and pain. What was it actually like for the other actors, on set with him once filming started?
Co-stars have said that watching him perform was less like watching acting and more like witnessing something raw.
Hmm.
It was this intense, palpable energy. He wasn't just wearing makeup, he was wearing the character's instability. People said he would stay in character between takes, his voice and movements always unpredictable. It was absolute psychological commitment.
And that kind of raw intensity, it has to come with an immediate and heavy cost. What were the signs that this was pushing him too far?
The main cost was his ability to switch off. Insomnia became crippling. We know from friends that he was averaging maybe 2 hours of sleep a night. He was mentally exhausted, and the darkness he'd invited in for the Joker just refused to leave. He couldn't silence the noise in his head.
That's a critical point, isn't it? The difference between professional commitment and personal consequence. I mean, method acting is a standard practice for many. What was so different here?
It was the subject and the depth. Usually an actor builds an off-ramp, a way out. But Ledger built a character on pure chaos, on instability. These are emotions that are designed to be destabilizing. And he didn't build an off-ramp. He poured so much of his own psychological energy into that void that when filming wrapped, he was just empty. He had no resources left to handle the emotional rebound.
So he finishes filming, but the role, the insomnia, the exhaustion, it all just lingers.
Yes, he struggled intensely to find peace. Friends said he was just constantly tired, overwhelmed. He was trying to move on to other projects, looking for that distraction, but his internal system was just crashing. He made the ultimate artistic sacrifice, and his human self was screaming for rest.
And this is the heartbreaking irony of it all. The world was getting ready to celebrate this monumental performance. The applause was coming. But Heath Ledger was in a state of crisis. He needed silence, not attention.
The burden was immediate, but the recognition was tragically delayed. The applause arrives too late. He was trying to catch up on months of psychological and physical debt, using prescription medications just to try to get a few hours of sleep to keep up with professional demands that just kept coming.
And we have to be clear about the devastating final result of all this. In January 2008, Heath Ledger passed away from an accidental overdose of those prescription medications.
Yes, and it's essential to reinforce that. The sources are firm.
Yeah.
This was an accident. The tragic result of a severely exhausted mind just struggling to find rest. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a calculated act. It was the catastrophic outcome of crossing that boundary between passion and burnout. He pushed his art to the absolute limit, and his health paid the price.
The world was in shock. When The Dark Knight came out later that year, the scale of his sacrifice became horrifyingly clear. People didn't just see a villain. They saw a performance so powerful it instantly cemented his legacy, an immortal of the screen.
The industry recognized it too. He won a posthumous Academy Award, an extremely rare honor, and for a comic book character. It just highlights how profoundly that performance resonated.
But the focus has to shift from the awards to the deeper, more painful lesson here. What's the essential human truth his life shows us?
It shows us a few powerful, unavoidable truths. First, that raw talent, if you use it without rest and recovery, it eventually becomes a form of self-torture. And second, that passion without any clear boundaries, the kind that chases uncomfortable truth no matter the personal cost, it can become a poison.
His commitment was absolute, but the cost was absolute too. And maybe the most poignant lesson is that the people who excel at making us feel, the chaos or the joy, they are often the ones hurting the most in silence.
His story just elevates the conversation way beyond acting. It becomes a vital discussion about professional balance, about giving yourself permission to heal. He was so committed to truth in his art that he neglected the truth of his own humanity.
So the core finding here is clear. Heath Ledger's story isn't just a tragedy of fame. It's a profound tragedy of silence and self-neglect in the pursuit of genius.
And that silence, the inability to step away, the struggle to ask for help, that's what we have to remember. Genius often carries a heavy shadow, and this is a powerful reminder that even the brightest talents need space to retreat, to heal, and to just be human again.
We adored the character he gave us. We celebrated the Joker and its terrifying brilliance. But in that applause, we can't lose sight of the quiet boy from Perth who just wanted to tell stories, not lose himself completely inside of them.
Right. His legacy is secured by that legendary performance, but his greatest contribution to us now might just be that hard lesson about boundaries. When we see that kind of brilliance, we have to remember the human investment behind it.
And that leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. If you know someone who dedicates everything they have to bring art or light into the world, remember to look beyond the performance. The bravest thing any of us can do is check on the people who are constantly trying to make others smile. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this exploration encourages you to reflect on that vital balance between our commitments and our own peace.